Hello and welcome to Modern Romance. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite films that's probably about 10 years old, even though I feel like it's much more recent, at least in my own mental consciousness. I feel like because it's had a recent impact on me and because I think of it as a recent film, I don't know, it's hard to think about it being 10 years old. I've also talked to a fair amount of people who are film critics and theorists about this film, to various acclaim, which is the film Crazy Stupid Love. And specifically what I want to be talking about is one point in the film where Ryan Gosling is talking to, I always think about from The Office, Steve Carell. So Steve Carell is going to Ryan Gosling because Ryan Gosling is a ladies' man. He has the ability to have sex with all of these women at the bar, and Steve Carell wants to be able to do that, so he goes to Gosling after his marriage has failed him to be able to get advice on what to do to make women interested in him. So during this entire process, Gosling is trying to give him a lot of the tips that I try and tell all of you to stay away from, which is how to manipulate women, all of these cues to get them to say yes in the moment, but things that aren't going to create long-lasting and happy relationships. And one of the things that he comes up with is that men have won the war of the sexes. And the reason why he says that that is a thing is because pole dancing has become an acceptable form of workout that women do on their free time, and that women now learn things that had formerly been relegated to, things more shady. I remember when porn and you had to go to a video store and they had like the beads, the curtain beads that you had to go through and were able to get all that stuff, and strip clubs and sex types of industries were much more risque back in the day. And he's making the point that because they've been popularized and because women now also want to have sex too, that men have won. And the idea behind this is really that all that men want is sex. So therefore, because we've been so good at manipulating women to also want sex, that we've won, because we've basically done all of the convincing that as long as you have all of the tools that people like Gosling has, then you can go out there and have as much sex as you want and you're fine. So the problem is that most people who use that type of reference totally lose fact of the idea that Gosling as a character is miserable. Yeah, he's able to have sex with all of these women, like he's very good at a very primal relationship with these people, but it never goes beyond that. So he has all of this money and he's buying things that he never uses, things that he doesn't need. He's chasing all kinds of things that are supposed to make him happy, but they don't make him happy, and no one cares about him, and he's simply miserable. And the only thing that he has is that he's better than the people who don't have what he has, which is never going to make you deeply feel like anything. So from that, he meets the Steve Carell person who reminds him of his dad, who was also cheated on and thrown out of the house. And one of the things that he says, which is true, is that a lot of guys take their partner for granted. And I always come back to this one phrase, which I will repeat here, which is that guys look for looks and women for ideas, and that's why women wear makeup and men lie, is that women want a romantic idea. It's not just that you pay the mortgage, it's that you are the provider. And the moment that you don't meet that ideal, which is typically more cavemanish, which is more primal, the moment that they think of you as not being that, then they feel like they don't have to be submissive or that they don't have to fulfill their role as the woman. So typically speaking, roles and stories are what make a culture. So the moment that you try and dismiss the story of a culture because the other side isn't filling up their part of the bargain, you definitely 100% need to learn sexual. You need to learn how to please your partner, but I think a lot of the time what ends up happening here is that, you know, in a more conservative society, what would end up happening is you have, you know, people who are virgins and they get married and they procreate, and it doesn't matter that your wife doesn't know how to perform oral sex well. It doesn't matter that your husband might not be very well endowed. It doesn't matter that he might be even premature and not really be able to go for very long. That if you don't have a basis of comparison, what you're getting is still better than what you had before, which was nothing. And I think that's true, but at the same time, you know, a lot of times in those rural, more conservative areas, things like pleasure, things like, you know, learning how to please your partner, learning techniques, those were not really talked about. You know, you talk about something like Kama Sutra, which is really a crazy book. And there's a lot of things in there that are, you know, I don't agree with, that are, you know, like foods to eat that are, you know, crazy from India, but like, you know, it's kind of been kept. Because here's the thing, like let's say you have a Kama Sutra book, you know, there's a lot of sex positions in there, there's also a lot of other crazy stuff, but let's say that you publish the Kama Sutra and you take all the crazy bits out. From a marketing standpoint, you know, if I'm a consumer and I look at, you know, an edited Kama Sutra and this is the original uncut version, I don't know what's cut, like I don't have a frame of reference to know what's been cut. So why would you edit it? Because the whole idea is that you're trying to give this unadulterated truth behind the curtain, which, you know, is an experience that traditionally most people didn't have a lot of experience, except for one partner who also didn't have a lot of experience. So the idea of the Playboy Casanova type who's been with a lot of different partners and who's learned a lot of different things from a lot of different lovers, yeah, I think there's romanticism to that, because yes, now that person has experience, you also have, yeah, but that person isn't going to care about me. And I think to some people, they come with this idea that like, well, if I'm with someone like that, I can take away learned experiences that I can bring forward. But what you don't realize when you do that is that you now have a basis of comparison. Like, one of the things that I try and tell people, this is a true story, is the best sex that I ever had was with a girl who was hopelessly addicted to crack. I didn't know that when I met her. Like, it wasn't apparent, like she didn't have messed up teeth or anything. But I knew from talking to her that all of her priorities in life were messed up. This was never going to be someone that I would trust to have children with. This is not someone that I was going to have a long-term future with. This is someone who was gorgeous, who happened to be amazing in bed and meet all of my own personal preferences. However, like, you know, that went on for a while, but ultimately it was never going to lead anywhere. So now I go forward and I'm meeting women who, you know, instead of being, you know, people who have a lot of sex and are addicted to drugs, you know, they have careers, they want children, they go to church, they, you know, they have things in their life that are going to be more necessary in implementing a relationship. And I'm sitting here like, well, why don't you have the knowledge and the ability to have sex like this other girl? I am now always going to have a basis of comparison where I'm going to feel unfulfilled because I'm not getting what I did before, even though I'm getting other things. So while sure, she taught me a few tricks and there's things I'm able to bring forward, it does create a comparison for me to not be as satisfied, as content, as thankful and as grateful as I would be had I not done that. So I think this idea that you're going to go out there and have lots of sex and it's going to make you happy, it's honestly a very hollow thing, because eventually when people leave, and they will leave if you're just randomly having sex with them, is they're essentially telling you that they don't care about you and you don't care about them, and you're chasing things in your life that you don't care about, that don't care about you, that don't have value. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you, it's like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of a good equivalency. It's like, when I buy something, anything that I'm bringing into my life, like if I'm buying a car, there's not quite the same as a relationship with a woman. I know people are going to say like, oh, you're a guy. I'm not really a car guy. But, there is, because it has a larger price tag next to it, I look at it as an investment. Like if I'm buying a car, I want something that's going to last a long time, that's not going to have very many problems. I don't want it in the shop. I don't want to pay for repairs. I don't want to spend time fixing it. I want to spend time using it and having it bring utility to my life and bring value to my life. And I needed to do what I needed to do and just augment the things that you have a car for. So, like, I know people who've had sports cars, and that sports car broke down all the time. But like when it went really fast and people looked at them. So people then are like, I need a car that doesn't break down so much. So they get a Camry. And they're like, but my Camry doesn't, do 1 to 60 in a second. Or, 2, I don't know, I'm not a car guy. But, like I miss my old Corvette that was horrible on gas, like all of the things that are wrong with a sports car. It's bad on gas, it's always in the shop, it's really expensive. I got something that's cheap, reliable, good on gas, never, breaks down, but I'm mad that it doesn't go as fast or doesn't have quite the same acceleration. Like whenever we were comparing these things, it's like, if you're buying a house, you want to, there's an old expression that there's 3 kinds of products. There's fast, there's cheap, and there's quality. You can have 2 of those 3 things. So you can either have something that's high quality and cheap, but it's going to take forever. Like there is a lot of time that's going to get into creating that thing. You can have something that's high quality and fast, but it's not going to be cheap. You can have something that's, cheap and fast, but it's not going to be quality. Like you can have 2 of those 3 things. And I think that sometimes when you're dealing with what you want out of a partner, and I think there's just a base of insecurity that comes from, do I know what I'm doing? Am I going to be able to make this person happy? And how do I get that experience without involving other people, which are always going to tend to bring problems in a relationship, insecurities in the relationship. I mean, I know there's a lot of swingers out there, and I'm not here to talk about, whether or not you should open your relationship up or whether that's right for you. I feel like this isn't the channel for that, but I can tell you that the amount of communication, the amount of trust, the amount of anxiety, like all of those things have to be really, really well received and fundamentally there before that comes into place. Because, it's a really hard conversation that can really bring in a lot of insecurities of like, well, yes, I love you, honey, but this other girl, she's way better at sex and she's really prettier than you are. Yeah, what's the purpose of having my current partner and then the crack whore? You know what I mean? Like, she's great at sex. Like, I don't want her near the kids, and I don't really want to hear her talk or life advice or anything else. But that's really unfair, because that takes a lot of the optimism and desire. Like, why am I going to just not have sex with my partner so I can put it all over here with someone I'm not going to build with? Because then now you have a partner that's not getting anything. So I think that you do have to balance that act of like, learning how to please someone. So I think there's a lot of, experienced sexual people like myself who have channels on learning how to please a partner. This isn't what this channel is, by the way. I don't really, get into sexual things too much, but those types of channels do exist out there. I don't necessarily think that porn is the way to go, just because you're looking at other people and you're comparing and you're thinking, oh, this girl's got, she's skinnier, she's got bigger boobs, he's got a bigger member or whatever, and you don't want to be comparing that way. But I definitely think there are techniques. There's plenty of self-help books out there and channels and things where the biggest things that I've learned is excitement, psychology, like learning what are the actual turn-ons, taboos, wanting to try, wanting to experiment. I think, just a sexual appetite, like how turned on, like how many times of sex does one partner want to have versus the other, which is one of those conversations that should really happen before you're in a relationship. But learning where nerve clusters are on both anatomies. And also, like, one of the things that, especially on women, the ideas that women are more difficult, I feel like women tend to have three major areas for their nerve clusters, and the concentration of nerve clusters are different on different women. Like, there are some women where you look at those three areas and two are basically dead. Like, they don't actually have nerve clusters there. But one of them is overly sensitive. Some are spread throughout, some are, like there's two that work and one that doesn't. Like, or sometimes, like, if they're too concentrated in an area, it's not even pleasurable. Like, there's too much sensation. So, there's a lot of things that you can learn just from books and writing that aren't necessarily going to be pornographic in nature. And that would be my biggest takeaway from that movie, is that at the core of that film, people are happiest when there's actual connections and there's people who really care about them. And, there's people who are trying to build relationships that matter. And while I don't think that you can take people for granted, there is an animal inside all of us, and we have to take care of each other's animal desires and understandings of what the relationship is. I ultimately think that if all you're basing things on is those narratives of base animal instinct, you're not going to be happy, you're not going to be satisfied, you're going to end up having a massage chair that you've never tried before because you watch Home Shopping Network all the time, because you're just looking for something that's going to be that endorphin rush that you need to get through the next day. And it's where we as people tend to actually thrive, is when we feel like we are trying to accomplish something that's bigger than ourselves.